everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be cracking this nearly 17-year-old World Championship deck. Now, if you don't know, World Championships come with 60 cards that were used by a player to do well at the World Championships. Sometimes it's the division winners. Sometimes if there's too many of the same decks winning, they pick second place, third place, etc. Sometimes if there's a tier 0 format like there was in 2022, you pick an 8th place deck, or a top 8 deck, sorry. Regardless, we're here to open up this very cool Worlds deck. This was used by Jun Hasabe in 2007 to win the juniors division, so I believe 10 and under is the age range there. I could be wrong though, because it's been a while since I was a junior. Anyway, so for this, we're going to crack it open. Going to be a sin. I'm going to show you the cards, kind of profile them, and I'll sleeve them after the video. Just kind of cool to explore these old decks because you don't see too many of these opened nowadays, especially from the perspective of a retro player. I'm not that old of a player. I guess I've only been playing since 2011, but yeah, I bring a little bit of different perspective to it, I guess, than like a collector opening it and being like, I wonder how much I can grade this random trainer card for. So the plastic is cracked there, and it is beautiful. Wow. It's been years since I've seen these. They changed the design of these in 2011 to be much bigger. The way we have it nowadays, it's very, cardboardy. I think they should go back to this. Let's, excluding the fact that it's all plastic, let's go back to smaller packaging. That would be nice. Let's do some little things when we can to save the environment. So here goes the seal on this, if I can get it open. I'm sorry for all the sealed collectors in the audience. This one probably hurts to watch. So, getting into it. Here we go. Oof, got a lot of little tabs there. A lot of plastic. Oh boy. I'm sure the sea turtles will be happy when I feed this to them. Let's get the Flygon deck out of here. Very cool design on here. I believe this was Hawaii for this year as well, which the World Championships, I believe, is going back to Hawaii this year. So I believe it was in, this is Hawaii. It was in Hawaii in 2007. I know it was in Hawaii in 2010 as well, and 2012. And now it's going back for 2024, which is going to be happening in a couple months as of the point of recording this video. I'm not going to go too much through here because, it's just a nice little booklet. I keep these. I collect all of these. Wow, 2007, Aloha. Did they mean Alola? That was 9 years prior to Sun and Moon. Was it hinting? Yeah, just a lot of focus on Diamond and Pearl Pokemon since 2007. Worlds was featuring the cards from EX Emerald to the first Diamond and Pearl base set. So a little bit of an odd meta that's kind of defined by either these complex EX decks like this one, and then there's also just the Diamond and Pearl decks, which are just big burr, like I'm a guy who has a big number on his card, and I'm going to turn off your abilities. Here's our Jun Hasabe winner, age 7, so congrats. And he defeated Hiroki Yano, which got 2nd place. And I believe Hiroki Yano would go and get a Worlds deck later on. Maybe he's got one from the year prior either. I've definitely heard that name before, so he's been around. And then there's also Paul, which got 4th place in junior, and he would actually go on next year to get 2nd place, I believe, in the seniors with his Blissey deck. So kind of interesting that there's some reoccurring players. I suppose there's probably not too many juniors and seniors at this time. It takes a lot of money to travel, so I'm sure they're from families that can afford that. So, got our seniors division people here. I don't really know too many of those names, but I do know that the winning deck, I believe, was an Empoleon deck. Again, big guy, big number, turn off your abilities. And Masters division, there's Tom Roos with Absolutions. I will probably never be able to afford that. Stefan from Denmark, notable because the Denmark gang apparently really likes 2007. Stefan Eriksson talked about liking this Flygon deck as well. So Stefan played a Flygon deck that did not get printed as a Worlds deck, unfortunately. 3rd place Masters Division was Yamato, which he was the 2004 World Champion, and he really took, I think, consecutive top 8s for, the first 3 years or something like that. Crazy good player. Stopped playing in 2010, I believe, which is last year, where he got top 16. So yeah, Lots of fun stuff in there. And like I said, I just saved these. These are cool. I just saved them in my closet. Here is the cards. I know that you're probably sick of me talking about the history, or maybe you're one of those like 3 people who really likes the history and you were happy that I was talking about it and not just looking at the cards. So wrapped in this weird like cellophane wrap. This is gonna be tough to get open. Might have to speed it up. Alrighty, as you can see, that took quite a while. I had to use some scissors to cut at the edges of the plastic. Be very, very careful with that. But we have our 60 card deck here. What is nice is that they use the Diamond and Pearl base energy, not with the actual set logo, but this is like the new energy style from this year. Cards are a little warped because they were in plastic for a while, but we're just going to do a little profile of the deck. So let's just get our evolution line sorted and we'll get started. So starting off, we have 4 copies of Trapinch. It is important to play a Delta Trapinch in this deck, so you play the grass type Delta Trapinch. Just going to make sure this is lined up on the edge. Yes, it is. We can put it right there. There's going to be a little bit of warp to them. Like I said, I'll save them afterwards. I play these decks, so they'll get a little beat up. That's just the way it is. There we go. So 4 copies of Trapinch. You do need to play the Delta Trapinch so that we can get a bonus that we'll talk about later on. Just a really good Trapinch as well, though. Not bad attacks on that guy. And a cool artwork. We have 2 copies of Vibrava. We do not play the Vibrava with Free Retreat, which is interesting to say the least. I think we probably should be playing the one with Free Retreat, but so Vibrava's also got 2 decent attacks, no weakness, which is nice, which they sometimes did with the dragon types back then. No matter what type they ended up as, they would have no weakness. We have 3 copies of Flygon EX. This is the main attacker of the deck, because it is FlyVees after all. And it's got 150 HP. EXs have a ton of HP. Back then anyway, that was a ton. For reference, most stage 2s in the EX era had like 100 or less. It's got these sand damage Pokebody. As long as Flygon's active, put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's benched basic Pokemon in between turns. So there is a lot of evolving in this format, but if you get Flygon set up fast enough, or if you just keep him in the active the whole game, you'll get some free damage counters on the board. And frankly, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to get a ton of damage counters on the board, because as long as you have 1, you can work with that with the second attack, or the only attack, second attribute. Psychic Pulse does 10 or 80 and 10 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has 8 damage counters on it. So as long as you get that damage on there at some point on the benched Pokemon, you can start racking up some Psychic Pulse chip damage onto the bench. We do also play 2 of the Flygon with just the Delta Flygon regular, no EX here, but is still a really cool card. You play this for its Delta Supply power, which allows you to attach a basic energy or Delta Rainbow Energy card from your hand to one of your Pokemon with Delta on its card. So essentially just an extra attachment each turn. And the way this deck works really needs that extra attachment. You can see the attack costs are pretty hefty on all of these Pokemon, and we do have a way to fix that, but we do also need that extra attachment. So you're generally going to want one of these in play. Notably, it does have a weakness, but also has a double resistance. So if you hit a matchup where they have a lot of lightning Pokemon or fighting Pokemon, such as Speed Lucario, Machamp, or the Rayquaza-based decks like Rayquaza, which were popular at the time, you can, in fact, use this Flygon as an attacker as well, though it's more just for support. We do have an EV line as well, so let's get those out. We have 2 copies of Eevee. I like that the deck's all sorted. I just have to put it backwards so I can actually sort it right. Eevee is just another Delta Pokemon important that we have. That really good art on this one by Arita. So it's just honestly nice even from a collector perspective. I'm a big fan of this Eevee. Owning it is very nice. And Metal Scoop, searches your disc pile for a metal energy attached to EV. Probably not going to be relevant, but 10 damage isn't terrible. We do have 2 copies of Jolteon EX, not a Delta Pokemon, but it evolves from Eevee, which is, and the Eevee's, nice bonus. We need those Delta Pokemon, you'll notice in a minute. Jolteon is here for a couple of reasons. It's got the Poke Power Evolutionary Thunder. When you evolve into Jolteon EX, you put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is a full-on spread deck. If you don't get to chip damage with Flygon's body, you want to use Evolutionary Thunder, which will put 1 damage counter on all your opponent's Pokemon. And then your Flygon's attack Psychic Pulse will start just throwing tons of damage, because you're doing 80 to active and potentially up to 10 on each bench Pokemon, which will, if you're doing all 5 bench Pokemon, you're getting 130 damage out, which is just a ton of damage. And there is ways to manipulate it, so it is actually live damage as well. We have 1 copy of Vaporeon EX, which just a lot of decks in 2007 play. Oh, there's another Eevee. Okay, let's just start with that real quick. Oops, you didn't see that. Yoink. This is professional live commentary. Oop, oop. 1 copy of Vaporeon EX. No Espeon, unfortunately, which I thought would have probably been good in here, but whatever. And no Umbreon, which is just a little bit worse. Or Flareon. Vaporeon does have pretty bulky HP for a Stage 1, but it is mainly here for Evolutionary Swirl, which once during your turn, when you play Vaporeon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, you may have, I think it's each player or your opponent. Yes, it's your opponent. So you have your opponent shuffle and draw 4. So essentially like a one-sided judge. You just have your opponent shuffle, draw 4. This seems really bad. Why would you want to give your opponent 4 cards? In this format, though, there is no other hand disruption. Rocket's admin had rotated by this point, so there's no Iono N effect. And we were 1 set off of getting Team Galactic's Wager in the next set, so the only way to hand disrupt your opponent without using like attacks is Vaporeon. So Vaporeon's pretty good. Also relevant to note that they hit different weaknesses, so while their attacks aren't like super good, I haven't been mentioning them, the Jolteon's attacks are actually pretty good. I should go over those in a second. These guys do hit different weaknesses, which is pretty good. Fast Wave just goes through resistance and powers, bodies, and any effects. It's one of those things, but it still does hit weakness, which is good. And then Hydro Splash for 60, just a decent slam attack. I forgot to mention Jolteon's attacks, so these are actually pretty good, so we will take the time to go over them. Jolteon has Second Bite, 20 plus 10 for each damage counter on your opponent's active. Because we stack up damage with these guys, it's pretty good for cleaning up. And Lightning Weakness isn't terrible either. And Thunder Blast just does 70 and discard a Lightning attached to Jolteon. A little bit less good because it takes more energy, but I can definitely... I've played FlyVees before in RSPK. You definitely use the attack on occasion. I talked earlier about how our damage is live. That's because we play 1 copy of Absol EX. Absol has the Cursed Eyes Poke Power. When you play it from your hand to your bench, you can choose to move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another. Yeah. So, basically, how this works is, let's just say my opponent's guy has 30 HP left, and then there's this random Pokemon I don't care about. Let's just say a supporting Pokemon like this Badoo that's on their bench. I can choose to move 3 damage counters off the Badoo and move it to another Pokemon to take a knockout. Or, there's all kinds of different math fixings you can do with Cursed Eyes. It's just a really good power. Even when it got reprinted in XY, it was still really good. And there's Psychic Pulse for 2 energy, which is actually really efficient. 30 and 10 to each your opponent's bench Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. So you're starting to see a theme. We have 2 different spread attacks that rely on damage counters on the board that just spread more damage to your opponent. Notably, this hits Dark Weakness, so if you run against a Ghost type, I suppose you can hit that. But this is more just a really efficient attack that we can power up in a single turn, and you'll see why later. We have 1 copy of Badoo. Badoo is just here for free attack. I don't know if it's actually very good, but a lot of people were running a couple of the early baby Pokemon in 2007 because these were the first free attacks. So people were a little bit I think a little too enamored on them. I don't know if we'd play these in retrospect, but errand running for 0 energy, search your deck for a trainer card and put it into your hand. It's not awful. Basically, one of the benefits over free attacks is that you can retreat into them on turn 1 and then use them, whereas our other setup attack in this deck that we'll talk about in a bit, you can't retreat into. So, you know, you can do that in a pinch. Like I said, I don't know if these would continue being played if people modernized the format. I've definitely seen like Infernape decks that cut the Badoos that were being played back then. We have a 1/1 Fearow line. We do play this Spearow. I don't think there's a Delta Spearow, so Spearow, just draw a card, not bad for a basic. And we play Fearow, which is the most important piece. With Delta Sign, once during your turn, you may search your deck for a Pokemon that has Delta in its name, or on its card, sorry, and put it into your hand. So this searches all of our Delta species Pokemon out of the deck. And it's just really good if you get this set up early. It's just going to get a ton of value. You're going to be able to find your Pokemon. And notably, to be able to actually attack with this deck, you do kind of need this Flygon in play, plus another Flygon or like Jolteon to attack with. So you do need a lot of pieces in order to actually attack with this deck. So it helps having the Delta Sign Fearow. We have one copy of Holon's Voltorb. We'll talk about him first before we talk about the other Holon Pokemon. Holon's Voltorb, 40 HP, seems pretty bad. However, you may attach Voltorb as an energy card to one of your Pokemon. It is a special energy that provides colorless. So it does take your energy attachment for turn, but essentially it's a Pokemon, so you can search it from the deck with any of the Pokemon search cards, and it works as a colorless energy. So not too bad. Notably, we can't accelerate that with Flygon, but it's fine. Lastly, this is the most important card in the deck. We have 4 copies of Holon's Cast Form. So Holon's Cast Form is setup and support. 50 HP, pretty bad, but it is the Delta Draw attack. Count the number of Pokemon you have in play with Delta on its card. Holon's Cast Form does not count, it's just all the Delta species guys. You count how many you have in play and then draw that many cards. So, you know, just a very good setup thing. Like I said, there's no hand disruption in this format, so you can just spam Cast Form. You could draw a bunch of cards. A lot of the speed fighting decks I was talking about earlier, like Speed, Lucario, Machamp, basically existed off their ability to prey on Cast Form being weak to fighting. Just get these fast starts and shut them down, because otherwise Cast Form can get out of hand, build up hand really quickly. And like Voltorb, Cast Form can also attach itself as an energy, but Cast Form has a different effect. It provides 2 of any rainbow energy, so any type at all. However, when you play it onto a Pokemon, you have to return another energy attached to that Pokemon to your hand, and you can't attach it if there isn't one. So let's just say I have a Flygon, I have a basic grass energy on there, I can attach Cast Form, the grass energy goes back to hand, and then I can use this Flygon to accelerate the grass energy back. That's how you pay for attacks in this deck, because that will get you 3 of any energy. Also, it allows you to you know, work with the Absol. You can put a Cast Form on there to pay for that thing's attack. Really, there's a lot you can do with it. We'll get back to the items later. We're going to start with supporters. We play 3 Mentor, or 2 Mentor, sorry. I thought there was 3. Mentor discards a card from your hand, search your deck for 3 Pokemon with 100 HP or less that are basics. So you can get your Cast Form most notably, but as well your Trapinches and Eevees. Those are usually going to be what you're going after. Notably, you can get Absol as well, because it is a basic and it has exactly 100 HP. So yeah, 100 HP or less. We play 2 Adventurer. This is a count I don't really agree with. I'll talk to about in a minute. Discard a card from your hand. If you do, draw 3. If you discard a Delta card, draw 4. So just a good, reliable draw supporter in these Delta decks that have the ability to search out these supporters, which we'll talk about later. The reason I disagree with it is I don't believe you ever need more than 1 Adventurer in a deck unless your strategy is very, very reliant along it. And what this deck does do that does help it is Fearow can always give you another Delta card to discard. But a lot of times you don't want to be discarding your Delta cards anyway. Usually you're just discarding a card to draw 3 that's not Delta. You play 1 Scientist, another Holon Supporter, discard a card from your hand, draw until you have the same number of cards in hand as your opponent. So notably, this card is very beneficial here. Instead of these, it's like a downside. Scientist is a benefit because you get to draw more cards. So Scientist essentially in this format is drawing a bunch of cards because there's no hand disruption besides Vaporeon, so usually going to be drawing a fair bit. In the RSPK format, Holon Scientist basically just reads draw 10 cards at any point if you're playing against a Pidgeot deck, so it's a very broken card, one of the best draw cards possibly ever printed due to the conditions it's in. 1 copy of Researcher, another Holon Supporter, so you discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a Metal Energy or a basic Pokemon or Evolution card that has Delta on its card. So essentially, you can just get your Delta Pokemon. Notably, you can get Fearow. So turn 1, you could go for a Mentor to find your Spearows and some other Pokemon. Turn 2, go for a Researcher, find your Fearow, and now you're able to search out anything, basically. Can also find Metal Energy, which is not relevant in this deck. Okay, I had to check to make sure. It is not relevant at all. That's fine. Anyway, we have a couple other supporters here. They're ones I'm not a huge fan of, but we'll mention them anyway. 1 copy of Field Worker. Draw 3. Your opponent may also draw a card. Just not a very good draw supporter, even in decks like this, where draw 3 isn't bad at this time. There is better supporters in the format that I think this deck should be playing instead, but obviously it's just a Worlds list, so... but there's cards like TV Reporter at the time that draw 3 and then you discard a card from your hand that I think are better than letting your opponent draw a card. A little bit out of order here with the counts, but 2 copies of Elm. Search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, put it into your hand. Seems really bad, but if you can get things like Fearow or Jolteon, you really start setting up, so it's not bad at all in the context of this format. 2 copies of Copycat. Shuffle your energy deck and then draw equal to your opponent's hand size. So again, there's not really much hand disruption besides Vaporeon, so Copycat's going to be netting you probably 6 or more cards in a good time to use it. If you're not netting that many, probably want to use something else. As for the most important trainer card in the deck, we have 4 copies of Holon Transceiver. Let me just get these out here. Getting a little cramped, I know. Transceiver searches the deck or discard pile for a supporter card with Holon in its name. So any of these 4 supporters. It means we essentially have 6 outs to that turn 1 Mentor, which is just the best. And because it can go at the discard pile as well, we can play 1-of copies of these supporters, and it works like a Versa Seeker, allowing us to reuse them. One of the strongest trainer cards ever printed. Very, very good card. 4 of in like almost every deck in the format. Moving on to the next thing, I'm just trying to sort these by count so it makes it more appealing to look at. We have 4 copies of Rare Candy. We play a lot of Evolution, so it's good to have Rare Candy. But Rare Candy doesn't work like it does nowadays. It is different back then. Choose one of your basic Pokemon and play. If you have a Stage 1 or Stage 2 that evolves from that Pokemon, play down that Pokemon, and it counts as evolving it. So notably, it says Stage 1 or Stage 2, so you can just put an Eevee down, Rare Candy it into Jolteon immediately. So Stage 1s it works with. And also, I said immediately. You don't have to wait a turn to use Rare Candy. You can use it on your first turn going second, or you can use it on the turn a Pokemon came into play. So late in the game, let's just say my opponent KO'd my Flygon and I need another Flygon. Well, let's just say I Fearow for the Flygon, Mentor for the Trapinch, and Rare Candy. I have another Flygon in play. Really, really good card. I miss old Rare Candy. This is a good artwork as well. Nice to have this. 2 copies of Windstorm. Choose 2 in any combination of tools and stadiums in play and discard them. So it's essentially Field Blower for the people who played in 2017 and 2018. Really good card. Does allow you to get rid of the notorious Cessation Crystal. Sorry, I had to take a drink. My voice is getting dry. So Cessation Crystal is a tool card that turns off the Pokepowers and Pokebodies of both players if it's attached to an opponent's Pokemon that isn't in the X that's active. So the Infernape deck I think doesn't play it, but the Empoleon deck does. So basically there's a lot of just big Diamond and Pearl cards that are, they rival the HP of the EXs as single prizers. Like Empoleon has like 130. And it's just going to attach a Cessation Crystal and just to say, I'm really big, I have a Cessation Crystal which turns off all of your Pokepowers, Pokebodies. What are you going to do about it? So you need to play Windstorm to get rid of the Cessation Crystals. That way you don't get stuck under the lock of Cessation. Because then you can't use your Flygon bodies, powers, you can't use your Vaporeon, Jolteon, you can't use Fearow. It feels bad. That card's evil. 1 copy of Warp Point. Your opponent switches the defending Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon, and then you switch your active. So essentially like escape rope for modern players. Just nice to have a switch card just in case you get trapped. Man, voice going dry. One thing I will note that this deck also counters with Windstorm is Crystal Beach, which turns all energy that count as 2 or more energy into just 1 colorless. So our cast forms would be turned off by that. But thankfully, we're good because we have Windstorm to help us out. We also have another stadium to bounce it, Power Tree. Once during each player's turn, They can look at their discard pile if they have a, I believe, if they played a supporter. No, it's just, I'm thinking of a different card. If they have no special energy in discard pile, they can look at their discard pile and grab a basic energy. So we don't play any special energy besides cast form, and cast form only counts as a special energy when attached. So we can just get back a basic energy, accelerate with Flygon, and we're good to go. One copy of Crystal Shard. As long as Crystal Shard is attached to a Pokemon, that Pokemon's type becomes colorless, and when you attack, you discard it at the end of the turn. So I'm not sure exactly what this is to hit for weakness. I don't remember what's weak to colorless in this format, honestly. Maybe there's... I know that Rayquaza has like no weakness. I can't think of what is weak to colorless, but if there's something weak to colorless, this is why we have Crystal Shard, to counter it. So, basic energy, we do have 9 of them. We have, or 10 of them in fact. We have 4 and 6 Psychic. So Psychic Pace for Flygon's attacks, obviously. So we need the most of it because it's our main attacker. And like I said, we can accelerate with Flygon, so it feels good. But Jolteon's also a great attacker, so we play 4 Lightning so that you can use Jolteon's attacks and even Fearow in a pinch. And obviously you can attach this to a Pokemon preemptively. Like, let's just say I have a, Trapinch and I attach a Lightning, and it's like, well, I don't actually want him to have the Lightning. That doesn't matter, because then I can attach Cast Form and I get the energy back. So, so one thing I did wish this deck maybe took advantage of is maybe a couple tax special energies just to bump with Cast Form, like Warp Energy or Cyclone Energy. Cyclone would be good for Cessation Crystal as well, because it moves the Pokemon out of the active spot. So maybe things are to consider, but I'm not going to change the list. My voice is getting very dry, so I'm just going to wrap up this video. Thank you all for watching this deck profile on this old 2007 EX Flygon Eevees FlyVees deck. It was fun to open up a piece of history here, and I'll get it sleeved up, and maybe we'll get a video out sometime in the next year with this deck. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.